So welcome everybody. Today I am privileged to be joined by my friend Mitch, the chair of Orrick. I had the pleasure a couple years back of introducing Mitch at our inaugural TLTF summit. And I remember saying, if you don't know Mitch, you should. And this statement's only become more true over the last couple of years. As he's become a closer friend to us, a bigger innovator in the vertical. And we're just humbled to have you here, Mitch. Thank you.
Zach, thank you. Thank you for those overly generous comments. And I just go back to you by saying, look, you're the straw that stirs the drink in this space. Unbelievable connector. You thought about in a way that I think was really prudent, ahead of the curve, how important it was to have really deep domain expertise. And we learned so much from you. And you're such a generous contributor, I think, to the success of so many folks in the ecosystem, whether it's folks you funded or not. Look, the honor is really all mine. So thank you.
All right. Well, that's enough with the niceties, but thank you. But it's only because we stand on your shoulders. But in the meantime, before we dive in, maybe provide a little bit of context on Orrick, its shape, its size, its reach.
Sure. We're about, I don't know, 1,100, 1,200 lawyers these days. I should know precisely. I'm more focused on our revenue, which is just under 1.5 billion for last year. We'll exceed 1.5 billion this year. We're focused on working with clients in the technology, energy and infrastructure, financial services, and life sciences industries. And we're trying to be roughly balanced between the transactional work, the litigation and disputes work, and the regulatory and enforcement work that we do in each of those three sectors. Global firm, been around for 161 years. Started in San Francisco. We don't have a global headquarters these days. We'd like to be dispersed and have a diffuse management team. I'm in Silicon Valley. I've been here for my whole career, which is about 30 years. I've been at Orrick for 19, and I've been the chair of the firm for, I guess it'll be 12 years in March.
Awesome. So maybe that hits on the three subjects I'd like to touch on today. First one is like technology waves in Silicon Valley. Second one is the construct of Orrick and how you guys are thinking about innovation. Third is kind of a simple one that we'll save for the end, but what type of advice, how are you thinking about the future? What type of advice would you give to my kids that are a little bit younger, but I'm trying to use this as a multi-purpose interview.
Okay.
Technology. I heard you interviewed once. You said you came out of Bowdoin and you wanted to figure out a way to get into technology. Your coding skills were, I don't think they've ever existed because I know you, you ended up in Silicon Valley at Adventure Law Group, which actually seems like there was some fascinating people there and some great experiences. But if we start there, like arriving in Silicon Valley in the 90s, I feel like you've been through the most impactful and important waves of technology, and you've seen a couple of these at this stage. Maybe there was internet, maybe there was some mobile, maybe, and now we're in the middle of AI and LLMs. And I'm curious, what's your take on this current wave? How does this feel, size, scope compared to some of these other changes?
That's a great question. Let me start by saying that there's obviously been waves of technology in Silicon Valley and outside of Silicon Valley well before the 90s. Semiconductors and vacuum tubes and the stuff that HP and Varian and stuff were doing in the late 1940s. I think were in conjunction with Stanford and Cal were the things that made this place special, combined with the advent of the venture capital industry. And so we're standing on the shoulders of those folks. And I have been through a couple waves. I think that the pace of change only changes, gets more rapid. And so the acceleration and the adoption things happen much more quickly than they did in the 1990s. Let me start with that. That said, I think the way that all of us, or the way that at least as a law firm leader, I approach the questions of what to do with the latest wave of technology is to start with really the same two sets of questions that I think would have been when they were appropriate when I started my career. The first is, how does this technology affect our clients? And therefore, how do we have to focus our practice and the talent we're adding? And then for those, as we're thinking about how we serve those clients, how does it affect the way that we run our firm, that we identify, retain, support, hopefully advance and inspire our talent, and change the way we deliver our services? So those two questions, the same, in 1996 as they are today, I think. There's a different an important piece of context today. I think that was not the case in 1996. In 1996, a lot of what happened in Silicon Valley kind of seemed to happen outside of the orbit of Washington, D.C. And that is not the case today. In general, every business, whether it's a tech company or in one of the other sectors that we serve, or an industrial fastener company, they're all using data differently than they did 30 years ago. That's causing them to innovate their businesses in a different way than they did 30 years ago. And no matter how well intended, I don't think federal and state regulators, particularly federal regulators, are keeping pace with the innovation that's happening. And as a result, really, thoughtful clients are looking for regulatory guidance on what they can and can't do, and they're not providing it. There's more gray area. At the same time, the enforcement world, particularly I think for big tech companies, is more harsh than it's been. And the view on Main Street about big tech is more skeptical than it's been at any time in my career. So that's the background in which we enter the Gen AI wave, right? And that's an interesting complication, because Gen AI is a big deal, and it's happening at a point when there is definitely the table's already been set in some ways in terms of the regulatory world and the enforcement world. Look, this change has been interesting. We have been at the forefront of advising clients through it. I think we've done more than $22 billion in financings in the past couple of years. We've worked on some of the largest exits, I think on 5 of the largest exits, including case text to TR. We've litigated a lot of big questions. We've helped hundreds of policies figure out their responsible policies and practices. And, we're proud to do all of that. All of that work has helped us become better understanding what it's like to deal with Gen AI on the front lines. And it's given us a window to think how we use Gen AI in our own business. And I'm pretty confident when I say this, because I saw this in other waves of recruiting as well. When I thought about what made Venture Law Group, which was an extraordinary place. Thanks for doing your homework and looking at it. It was an amazing place to start a career, and there were so many smart, innovative, talented people there who've gone on to do great things. It was really an awesome place to kind of get your grounding in this whole thing. But I think we viewed then that we were going to compete not only on the basis of our brand and our clients and our culture, but also in part on our technology. Then, and it's so true now. And now I think is not only is that true, but I think in someday soon, part of what we'll be competing on is our data set, because I think it will be relevant to how we provide services and the quality and the quantitative rigor behind which we provide services. So that's a big deal. I also think that there's something different today than there was in the internet era and the ones that followed between then and now, which is clients have sophisticated in-house legal operations with procurement folks, really thoughtful legal ops teams, and a whole bunch of professionals that never existed in the past. Their in-house capabilities are much larger, more sophisticated, thoughtful than they've ever been in the past. And that means that there are much more sophisticated consumers on the other end, and they are driving value from the client side more than they ever used to. They used to sort of be a sort of sleepy kind of lovely relationship that you provide legal services to your clients. They may haggle over the bill here or there, but they didn't have an internal function to sort of think about, how do I make this whole process more efficient? How can I diversify the firms we're working with? How do I disaggregate the work that's getting done? All of that's a big change. And all of that means we need to perpetually get better, not only at the way we deliver our services and the value with which we deliver it, but also in terms of the decisions we're making in-house, so that we can make sure that we are not falling behind on a technological advantage. Long answer, but hopefully that makes some sense.
It does make sense, and you kind of destroyed about 10 questions I had for you.
Sorry.
You touched upon a lot of. It was great, but if I back up, you mentioned the concept of Silicon Valley. You're sitting there right now. I also heard you say, I think you said Orrick technically doesn't have a headquarters anymore.
That's right.
And I'm curious, do you think, centers of gravity like Silicon Valley was for technology? Do you think that they become as important in the future? Do you think they become a lot less important? Is that a data point that you don't think of a headquarters for Orrick?
It's interesting. So the decision around not having a headquarters was more to let 1,000 flowers bloom than a conscious decision to de-emphasize San Francisco versus other places. And I think that there are, gravitational pulls. Look, financial centers, New York, London, used to be Hong Kong, not really anymore. A little different than the tech centers, a little bit different than the energy, centers in the world, a little bit different. The infrastructure centers, different than the life science centers. And so our view is making sure that we are relevant in each of the places that matters to the industries we're serving and have real presence there is important. And I also think it's important to recognize that increasingly we don't only work in a particular office. So if we have an important piece of IP litigation of our Silicon Valley office, we're going to put the best people around the world on that matter. They're not necessarily going to be the team only in Silicon Valley. May well be the person that we need who's really, core to that piece of IP litigation is a person who's in Boston, who, studied, right around Kendall Square, has a lot of experience with the core technology that was developed in that life sciences market. And so we like the idea of thinking of ourselves as an integrated firm, which brings in the very best talent from anywhere around the firm. I think it's better for our clients to have that outlook. It's a little uncomfortable. Honestly, Zach, it's like wearing your watch like in the wrong hand or something like that. It's not that big a deal, but the idea of really trying consciously to say we don't have a headquarters, we're a global firm and we're integrated. We want to walk the walk on that, even if it feels a little bit weird to say it that way. But it's not a marketing gimmick. It's more of a mental construct that we want to make sure that we're thinking about bringing the very best people for our clients who can deliver the best outcomes, the best services and all that, and have the right expertise everywhere in the globe. And we start by thinking what's best for the client, not who's the person that's, 2 doors down the hall from me.
So you talked about some of the way you're thinking about data and or you touched upon some of that stuff. I went, I was on your website doing some research. You click the About Us and there's, there's 7 different links. I think 3 or 4 of them talk about technology, innovation, highlighting things like a LegalTech directory, highlighting all the observatory and all the stuff that's happening there. So I don't think it was surprising to me or anybody that you guys have been an early adopter of Gen AI. And I'm curious, I know you've been experimenting with it for a year or two. What are some of the early learnings? What are some of the early findings?
That's a great question. So I think right now, about 60% of our lawyers are using Orrick.ai, which is our homegrown product, on a daily basis to assist with various tasks from basic proofreading to basic research to drafting and coming up with checklists and stuff like that. So literally 60% of our lawyers are using it on a daily basis, and I think about half our staff, ballpark. I think that the people who are using it on a regular basis are feeling like they're getting benefit from it. We're trying hard to take that benefit by sharing prompts by observing how the team is using the tools and encouraging folks to share feedback with one another and have all of us get more comfortable so that we can use it in thoughtful ways. I think we're very much in the early innings, Zach, in the sense of using generative AI to assist us in our work. By that, the examples I just gave were assisting our work. I don't think we're yet augmenting or automating our work, right? And I think those are stages that will follow. I don't want to overstate the impact it's having, but I do think it is clear that the use that we're getting is giving us enough information that we can therefore be thoughtful about what new functionality we want to add, what we should be doing in monthly drops, how we can train people to be even more effective, how we can share shortcuts for those who aren't using it on a daily basis. And overwhelmingly, the sort of scuttlebutt that's coming back is, hey, this is powerful. It's helping us be more efficient and improves quality. It is for the most part, a bottoms up, not top down exercise, right? It is led mostly by people who have a ton of the drafting and research responsibility, and who are finding this to be helpful, for them in what they're doing. Some of our, business development folks are using it to get and gather data more efficiently, and maybe draft a couple emails or rough drafts of emails. Far from life changing, but clearly something that's saving time, making the world a little bit better, maybe having a slightly higher ratio of creative and thoughtful input rather than than the kind of grunt work. And that's the approach that we're taking. We're hoping to get from this assist stage to something more powerful, where, boy, maybe we can start to really get a lot further on the RFPs, and there's more data that we can be using to be responsive on that, and we can compare tools and make better decisions. So that's kind of where we are. What's interesting to me about that is I think some people, by the way, poo-poo Gen AI and say we don't know what the killer app yet is, and I don't want to pretend it's been transformational to us. It's assisting us. It is not in any way transforming us yet. But if I look at the arc of what I started doing when I began practicing, I worked hard and I got a lot of responsibility. We were a focused boutique that was doing one thing and trying hard to do it better than anybody in the world. We were unapologetic about trying to be the best, most efficient people helping startup companies with their corporate work, leveraging technology and having deep domain experience. And our view is take equally hardworking, smart people. The focused people who are sharing information will win. That was kind of the philosophy behind it, right? And we had an early tool that allows you to scan documents on your desk and do all kinds of cool things. But you know what? I spent 3 nights a week from 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock taking the financing documents that I hadn't completed before my assistant left at 6, copying them, putting them in envelopes, making sure there were sign here tabs, bundling them up, and then taking them to the courier, who at 10:15, I think that was the last pickup, would then take those and drive them off in a van to the San Francisco airport for the last FedEx, flight out at 11. That wasn't awesome, and it wasn't great for the clients who are paying for it. It wasn't great for me. And it took a lot of time. And then we did a closing. Someone would sit in a room, right, and look through these files of things with a checklist and say, "Oh, geez, we're missing the office steel from Bimini. What do we do about this?" And now, of course, that does not happen. You're just sending out your emails electronically. You're getting DocuSign back, and that whole process, which was a lot of hours, a lot of painful hours, has disappeared. Is anyone worse for that? No, right? The job is just vastly improved by the fact that you don't do that. Moreover, I am not one of those lawyers who thinks like, the golden era of great lawyering happened to be when I started. I don't know, maybe I was a hardworking fellow. Maybe I did 20 venture deals a year, and that was a lot. Maybe a little bit more. I think that the average associate today, because they're not dealing with all of that grunt work, probably is doing 50% more deals per year than I did. And that means they're getting that much better at pattern recognition, seeing solutions to problems, identifying ways to streamline the negotiation. And, for a given amount of experience, 1 year of me in 1996 versus someone who is, a similar person joining the firm in 2024, that person in 2024 has more experience, more chops and at bats at substantive work than I did. And we should be cognizant of the fact that that's great. And if we get just a little bit better at enabling us to assist what we're doing, no less augment or automate what we're doing, it's going to be the quality of the job is going to be both more interesting and hopefully more rewarding. And I'm a big believer. Maybe I'm too much optimistic about that, but that's going to be powerful in terms of the way that it might impact the talent model for us. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was going to say, does that change the talent model?
I think, let me say this. It's too early to know how fundamentally it changes the talent model, because it really depends where on the spectrum of assist, augment, and automate this all comes out, right? But for sure, my best guess is the following, is that it's probably on the same scale over the next couple of years of what I saw over the 30 years from when I started to now. And that it enables people to be more efficient, and it allows people to have more experience base and more data on which to deliver judgment calls. And it probably makes interpersonal skills more important than they were when stuffing envelopes was some important component of your job, which really didn't require an awful lot of interpersonal anything, just required a little bit of grit. So I do think associates are going to have the opportunity to gain experience and reps much more quickly. I hope that means that frees people up to spend more time mentoring and coaching at the more senior levels as well, so that people will feel a greater connection to the practice. And I don't know if it's going to shape out in that way, Zach, but I'm an optimistic fella. And I think that our job is to work hard to think about how to define the workflow in a way that allows people to get the benefits, both our clients and our teams, to get the benefits of this move from assistance to augmentation to automation.
You had me come in and talk to some of your. You have a commission. I think you call it the 2030 commission.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, you were
involved.
such a great,
I'm just recalling this
speaker.
Yeah. You want to give a little context on how you're thinking about that?
Sure, I'd be so happy to do that. And thank you for doing it again. The 2030 commission was set up to identify roughly 18 extraordinary junior partners in the firm, and to ask, actually, it's not just junior partners, it's mostly junior partners. We have a couple senior partners on there, very, very much on purpose. And people have a context who can provide some historical context for what we're seeing today. So it's a bit of a mix. It's a dry martini, though. It's there isn't that much vermouth if the vermouth are the folks with a lot of experience, more oriented toward people who are earlier in their careers, but an extraordinary group. And we're asking them to think about what changes do they want to, what do they want their law firm to look like in 2030? And think ahead, be a bit of a futurist, not too far off, a midterm futurist. Think about how the firm would change and how you want it to change. And then what changes do we need to start implementing in Orrick in 2025 in order to become the firm that they want to practice at in 2030? What's interesting about this commission is we're trying to keep the composition of this commission the same this year and through the next 5 years, and have them kind of put out a plan around what is the firm that they want to be in 2030 across a couple dimensions. One of which is, for example, talent. How will we look at talent? How should we be hiring differently? What skills should we be hiring for? What training should we do that's different, et cetera? And a couple other dimensions. And then what do we need to do now to get there? It's a great inquiry, right? I'm really proud of the fact that we're doing this. I'm not really aware of any other firms doing it. We've had some outside, resources like you and other brilliant speakers come in to help, really frame the questions for folks. And I'm hopeful it's been as exciting for the folks who are participating in it as it has been for me to be sort of facilitating some of it. I think that folks are wrestling with all the right questions. And what's really interesting, of course, is most of the people who are on that commission are much more digitally native and much more innovation comfortable than I am. And I think of myself as someone who strives constantly to think about how do we innovate. It's a conscious effort for me sometimes, and it's just natural, for the people who are earlier in their careers. In the same way, it's probably natural for your kids and mine. Your kids are around 12-ish. I got kids in my early 20s or their early 20s. It's just interesting to see, how much more digitally native my kids are than me, and I bet your kids are than them. And it's really good then to get these people who are thinking about the question from a different generational perspective and with a very different sense of history than the one I'm burdened by or benefited from. Anyway, that's what we're doing with that group, and they're diving really into thinking about the law firm of the future in terms of structure, technology, client service, and talent pool and our talent model.
Unknown caller.
Sorry about that, Zach.
No worries. It's a fascinating exercise because think back to a Bill Gates quote, people overestimate what happens
Yeah,
with
yeah.
technology in 2 years, underestimate 10. And it's like, you're going right at that with, where are we going to be in 6, 7 years? Only because we're constricted by time. You brought up, and because you brought it up, my kids, what, to go a little bit further out, like, how do you see things developing? What type of advice do you think, and what type of skills do you think are important for the younger generation these days?
So I'm going to answer this in two ways. In terms of skills, I'm optimistic that, or I'm of the view that hiring for people who are technologically talented, because there's going to be more technological innovation, is not necessarily the right way to go. You just mentioned I was a liberal arts kid who came out of a tiny liberal arts school in Maine, and I'm a big believer in the idea of finding people who are able to think and deal with change and don't have a set, aren't experts in a particular discipline, but can think more broadly. I think that people with lots of interpersonal skills and the ability to think in constrained ways and draw on history and stuff like that are helpful. Different question than how would I advise those kids, though, to be successful in a career. I'm about to tell you, I'll give to your kids virtually the advice I've given to my kids and lots of others. I have a notebook I keep on my desk. This notebook right here, weirdly colored and stuff, right? I got a bunch of these. And every Friday before I go home, I set a timer. I box, and so I have a 3-minute timer app on my phone. I sit down and write and try to write down in 3 minutes something that brought me real joy or pride during the course of the week, and something that didn't, or that I could have done better. And I want to make sure I don't make the same mistake again. And I write it only to myself in my quick handwriting, and I don't look at what I wrote. I just close it. And I do this for a quarter, calendar quarters. And then I come in with a big cup of coffee on a Saturday and try to think about what were the things that brought me joy over that last quarter, and what were some of the things that did not, and the things that I messed up and can improve upon. And I try, before I open up that notebook, to take my best guess at what I wrote. I try to reflect upon what I would have written the last quarter. And while I get a little bit better at it over the time, I always over-index on the most recent experience and kind of forget what happened at the beginning part of the quarter.
Yeah.
And then I take stock of what I've written down in this notebook, and I try to come up with a plan to do more of the things that brought me a sense of purpose, joy, and meaning, and less of the stuff that didn't, and to think about how I can either solve by myself or giving to someone else who's better than me the stuff that I messed up on, right? And look, I'm lucky that I can delegate stuff to people who are better than me, and not everyone has that flexibility. But I've been doing this weird exercise, something like gratitude or self-reflection, for a long time, for well before there was anyone to delegate anything to, right? And I have found that it made me more attuned to what makes me happy. I would have said to you when I started my career 30 years ago, I really like to wrestle with ideas and work on the cutting edge of things. I've come to realize through pattern recognition, the people I work with probably matter more to me than what I'm working on. And I take a disproportionate amount of pleasure by respecting the people I work with than any other thing. And so if I can find myself finding clients and people internally who I really respect and inspired by, I'm super happy. And if I'm working with someone who I think is a little bit less easy for me to work successfully with, it's disproportionately draining for me. There's a bunch of other kinds of observations like that. But I think this simple exercise, 3 minutes a week with some quarterly self-reflection, is a really helpful way to think about how to position yourself, no matter what job you're in, to take stock of whether it's the right job because you have the right ratio of things you want, or to find assignments that put you in a position to do more of what you think you're good and passionate about. And if you start to think about it this way, I think you see those opportunities like mushrooms after the rain. You can jump on them. Similarly, you can kind of see the stuff that you don't want to do. It's kind of a flashing red light about avoid that. That's not going to work out for you. And that's the advice I would give your kids. Now, I tell you, my kids have not listened to this advice in one iota, but I think a couple other people have. And I think that occasionally, not that often, but more frequently than you think, people come back to you and say, I've tried your little weird notebook method, and it's been working for me, and it gives me enormous satisfaction when it works. So that's my best advice, Zach.
That was That's going to turn into be a huge head fake because it's 4:45. It's 4:30 on a Friday as we film this, and I am going to hang up and I'm looking for a pad of paper and give this thing a try right now. So
I'll send you a bunch of these.
that would be awesome. I can't thank you enough for joining us. It is we're thrilled that more folks in the world can hear your story and hear how you're thinking about the world through your lens, through Orrick's lens. It is always great to spend time with you, and looking forward to seeing you soon.
Zach, it's always a pleasure. Thank you for everything you're doing for the industry. Thank you for having me as a guest. Thank you for being so helpful to so many of our clients over the years, and look forward to a lengthy partnership with you.
All right, same here.
Have a great one.